Hello, and thank you for joining me on this gentle journey. Tonight, we step into the misty rainforests of the Congo, where the Okapi moves quietly through dense green shadows. In this soft, humid world, light filters gently through the canopy, breaking into calm patterns across leaves and forest floor. The Okapi carries a quiet presence, part giraffe, part mystery, moving slowly and carefully as if it belongs completely to the hidden language of the forest. Let your mind settle into this peaceful jungle atmosphere where everything feels soft, distant, and calm. If you enjoy this relaxing moment, please consider liking, subscribing, or sharing your thoughts below. But for now, simply breathe and relax. Let's begin. Deep within Central Africa lies the vast rainforest basin known as the Congo Basin, a sprawling world of humidity, shadow, and layered silence. It is not a single forest, but an immense living system stretching beyond visible horizons, folding rivers, swamps, and dense woodland into one continuous organism of green. From above, it appears like an endless canopy. From within, it becomes something far more intricate, an enclosed universe where light, sound, and space behave differently than anywhere else on Earth. Beneath the upper canopy, the forest is divided into tiers. The tallest trees rise like ancient columns, their crowns interlocking high above, forming a ceiling that filters sunlight into broken fragments. Below them, a second layer of twisted trunks and broad leaves creates a dim corridor of green-brown twilight. And closer still to the ground, the understory thickens into tangled vines, saplings, and shadowed clearings that appear and vanish depending on the angle of movement. In this lowest world, visibility shortens to only a few meters, and every direction feels enclosed. It is here, in this compressed space of filtered light and damp air, that the Okapi moves with quiet precision. Its presence is rarely noticed, not because it is absent, but because the forest itself resists clarity. Each step it takes is absorbed by layers of moss and soil that soften impact. Each movement is folded into the background rhythm of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. The Okapi does not interrupt the forest, it disappears into it. Sound behaves differently in this environment. Without long open distances to carry it, noise becomes localized, muted, almost absorbed. A falling branch does not echo, it dissolves. Even the calls of distant animals feel softened, as though the forest itself is pressing gently against every vibration. This creates an atmosphere where awareness is fragmented, where survival depends on interpreting subtle changes rather than clear signals. Water is everywhere, though often unseen. It clings to leaves, collects in hollows, and seeps through the soil in slow, patient movement. Rivers carve through the landscape like dark veins, shaping corridors that guide both animals and vegetation. During rainfall, the entire forest seems to breathe more heavily as droplets pass through layers of leaves long before reaching the ground. The Okapi navigates this shifting moisture with familiarity, its world defined not by dryness or permanence, but by cycles of saturation and renewal. Vegetation grows in response to this constant abundance. Plants compete not for survival in the traditional sense, but for access to light. This struggle shapes their forms: broad leaves, climbing vines, exaggerated heights, all reaching upward in silent competition. Yet, for every plant that rises, many others remain in perpetual shade, forming the dense understory that defines the Okapi's domain. Within this enclosed architecture of life, pathways are not clearly drawn, but gradually formed through repeated passage. Animals move along inherited routes, subtle corridors shaped by generations of movement. These paths are not visible like roads, but felt in the spacing of branches, the slight openings between thickets, the memory embedded in terrain. Time within the forest feels slowed, as if measured not in hours, but in shifting light and gradual moisture changes. Morning does not arrive sharply, it diffuses. Evening does not fall, it accumulates. In this rhythm, the Okapi exists as part of a system that predates observation, continuing its silent cycles regardless of whether it is seen or not. The Congo rainforest is not a backdrop to life. It is the structure of life itself, and within its layered depths, every movement, including that of the Okapi, becomes part of a larger hidden continuity. The Okapi appears almost contradictory at first glance, as if two separate evolutionary histories were merged into a single living form. Hidden within the forests of the Congo basin, it carries a silhouette that confuses expectation. A body shaped with the quiet mass of a forest browser, yet legs marked with bold striping that seems borrowed from distant open landscapes. For early observers, this combination created uncertainty, as though nature had produced an exception rather than a rule. Yet within evolutionary biology, it represents something far more precise: adaptation shaped by isolation, pressure, and environment over vast spans of time. Its connection to the giraffe lineage becomes clearer when examined through anatomy rather than appearance. Beneath its forest-adapted proportions lies a skeletal structure that echoes its distant relatives, particularly in the elongated neck and specialized feeding mechanisms, though reduced and refined for dense environments. Unlike giraffes that evolved for open savanna browsing, the Okapi's form has been compressed and adjusted for narrow pathways and limited visibility. This divergence illustrates how shared ancestry can produce dramatically different outcomes when environments impose distinct survival demands. Evolution does not move toward a single ideal form. It branches, fragments, and adapts in response to ecological constraint. For centuries, the Okapi remained unknown to scientific classification outside local knowledge systems in Central Africa. Indigenous communities were familiar with its presence long before Western exploration documented it. Yet its existence was often dismissed as legend when described by early travelers. It was not until the early 20th century that physical evidence confirmed its reality, forcing zoology to revise assumptions about what remained undiscovered in the world's remaining wild regions. This late recognition underscored a broader truth. Even in an era of expanding exploration, entire species could persist beyond scientific awareness, hidden not by magic, but by geography and ecological complexity. The animal's unusual appearance also reflects the selective pressures of its environment. In dense rainforest conditions, visibility is limited, movement corridors are narrow, and survival depends less on speed and more on concealment and efficiency. Traits that might seem mismatched in open ecosystems become highly effective in shaded understories. The striped pattern on its legs, for example, loses its strangeness when viewed under shifting forest light, where broken illumination transforms solid forms into fragmented visuals. Similarly, its compact body allows it to navigate vegetation that would obstruct larger, more open-adapted herbivores. What appears paradoxical is, in reality, a coherent response to environmental constraint. In this way, the Okapi challenges simplified interpretations of evolution. It is neither an incomplete giraffe nor an evolutionary anomaly, but a fully realized adaptation to a specific ecological niche. Its form demonstrates how life can diverge in unexpected directions when isolated within complex habitats. Within the broader narrative of biodiversity, it stands as a reminder that evolutionary success is not defined by familiarity or dominance, but by suitability to context. Hidden within the green labyrinth of Central Africa, it persists as a quiet resolution to a complex biological equation shaped by time, environment, and chance. Sunlight in the Congo basin rarely reaches the forest floor in a steady form. Instead, it fractures into scattered beams that shift constantly as wind moves the canopy above. Within this unstable illumination, visual perception becomes unreliable and outlines lose their certainty. It is in this environment that the Okapi's striped pattern gains its full significance, not as decoration, but as a functional response to optical complexity. Vertical markings run along the animal's legs, creating alternating bands of light and shadow across its limbs. When the Okapi stands still among dense vegetation, these stripes blend with surrounding stems, vines, and filtered sunlight. The effect is not to make the animal invisible, but to distort the brain's ability to separate its body from the surrounding environment. In forests where light is already fragmented, additional patterning increases ambiguity, especially at a distance. Movement changes the effectiveness of this adaptation. As the Okapi steps forward through dense undergrowth, each limb passes through shifting patches of illumination. The stripes no longer form a single readable shape. Instead, they break motion into segments. Observers, whether predators or other animals, struggle to track continuity. This visual disruption becomes particularly effective in low-light conditions, where contrast is already reduced. Evolutionary biology explains this feature as a form of disruptive coloration, a strategy found in multiple species across different ecosystems. Unlike uniform camouflage, which relies on matching a background, disruptive patterns interfere with shape recognition. In the case of the Okapi, this strategy aligns closely with the rainforest environment, where backgrounds are rarely uniform. Leaves overlap, branches intersect, and light flickers unpredictably across surfaces, making consistency nearly impossible. Above the striped limbs, the Okapi's torso is darker and more subdued in tone. This upper coloration absorbs light rather than reflecting it, reducing the likelihood of silhouette detection. When combined with the patterned lower body, the result is a layered form of concealment that operates differently depending on viewing angle and distance. From afar, the animal may appear as fragmented vertical elements within vegetation rather than a coherent body. Forest predators in this region, historically including large felids such as leopards, rely heavily on visual tracking and short bursts of movement detection. In such a context, even slight delays in recognition can determine whether an encounter is successful. The Okapi's striping does not prevent detection entirely, but it reduces clarity long enough to improve chances of escape or avoidance. Environmental lighting plays an equally important role in this system. Canopy density changes throughout the day as wind shifts leaves and branches. At certain moments, sunlight penetrates more deeply, creating high-contrast patches on the forest floor. At other times, the understory remains almost entirely shaded. The Okapi's pattern remains effective across these variations because it does not depend on a single lighting condition. Instead, it interacts with whatever light structure is present at any given moment. Scientific observation has shown that similar strategies appear in other forest-dwelling species, though rarely in identical form. Zebras, often cited for comparison, inhabit open grasslands, where striping may confuse motion perception at long distance. In contrast, the okapi's environment is enclosed, with shorter sight lines and more complex visual noise. This difference highlights how similar patterns can emerge under different ecological pressures, while serving related but distinct functions. Close-range visibility of the okapi reveals that the striping is most prominent on the hindquarters and legs, while the head and upper body remain relatively uniform. This distribution likely reflects functional priorities, as lower limbs are more exposed during movement through vegetation. When the animal steps carefully between roots and stems, these areas are the most visible and therefore the most in need of visual disruption. Light filtering through rain-soaked leaves further enhances the effect. Water droplets scatter illumination, producing irregular highlights that interact with the stripes. Under these conditions, boundaries between body and environment blur even further, reinforcing the animal's integration into its surroundings. In this layered interplay of light, motion, and pattern, the okapi's appearance becomes less a fixed design and more a dynamic interaction with its habitat. Its camouflage is not static. It changes depending on how the forest itself is structured at any given moment, turning perception into something unstable and uncertain. Across the dense interior of the Congo basin, the okapi moves in a manner defined not by group coordination, but by individual necessity. Each animal occupies a loosely defined home range within the forest, shaped by food availability, vegetation density, and long-established movement familiarity. These ranges often overlap, yet direct interaction remains uncommon, reflecting a lifestyle adapted to dispersed resources and limited visibility. Within this environment, separation between individuals is not a disadvantage, but a structural feature of survival. Food sources such as leaves, buds, fruits, and fungi are scattered through the understory, requiring steady, deliberate movement rather than collective foraging. Because vegetation is abundant but unevenly distributed, grouping together would increase competition without providing significant ecological benefit. Deep in shaded corridors formed by intertwined roots and saplings, the okapi relies heavily on olfactory communication. Specialized scent glands located in the feet deposit chemical markers onto the forest floor with each step. These signals accumulate along frequently traveled paths, forming invisible networks of information that indicate presence, identity, and reproductive status. Additional scent marking occurs through urine deposits on vegetation, reinforcing these chemical boundaries in areas of repeated use. Movement patterns reveal a strong dependence on memory rather than visual navigation. With sight lines restricted to short distances, the okapi memorizes spatial arrangements of obstacles, openings, and feeding locations. Over time, repeated travel reinforces subtle pathways through the understory. These routes are not fixed trails in a human sense, but flexible corridors that shift gradually as vegetation grows, falls, and regenerates. Communication between individuals occurs at low intensity. Soft vocalizations, including low-frequency sounds, are used during rare encounters or between mothers and calves. Calves remain closely associated with their mothers for extended periods, often staying hidden within dense vegetation during early development stages. This concealment reduces exposure to predators and aligns with the broader strategy of minimizing detection in a complex environment. Encounters between adult okapis are brief and infrequent. When they occur, they are typically related to reproductive behavior or territorial assessment. Even then, interaction tends to be limited to scent evaluation and minimal visual contact before separation resumes. There is no sustained grouping behavior comparable to herd animals of open landscapes, as the structure of the forest does not support large coordinated movement. In dense vegetation zones, feeding activity becomes the central focus of daily movement. The okapi browses selectively, targeting a wide variety of plant species within reach of its elongated tongue. This feeding strategy requires constant adjustment to plant availability, encouraging solitary travel as individuals move independently through resource patches. The absence of group feeding reduces competition and allows for more efficient exploitation of localized vegetation. Environmental pressure has shaped this independence over evolutionary time. Predation risk is mitigated not through collective defense, but through concealment and unpredictability. By avoiding predictable group movement patterns, individuals reduce the likelihood of detection. The forest's complexity supports this strategy, as visual tracking becomes unreliable beyond short distances. Rainfall cycles further influence behavior. During wetter periods, softened ground absorbs footfalls more effectively, reducing acoustic traces of movement. During drier intervals, individuals adjust routes to minimize exposure across open gaps in vegetation. These adjustments are subtle but continuous, reflecting responsiveness to shifting environmental conditions. Calves learn these patterns gradually, accompanying their mothers through increasingly complex routes as they mature. Learning occurs through repetition rather than instruction, with spatial familiarity developing over extended periods of observation and movement. By the time independence is reached, young okapis have already internalized the structure of their surrounding landscape. In this system of dispersed existence, the okapi represents a form of adaptation where survival depends on autonomy rather than cohesion. Its solitary structure is not an absence of social complexity, but a response to the spatial and ecological realities of a densely layered forest. Beneath the layered canopy of the Congo basin, vegetation grows in tightly stacked tiers, where competition for sunlight defines nearly every form of plant structure. In this shaded environment, the okapi occupies a specialized feeding role as a browser, selecting leaves, shoots, and fruits from the understory with careful precision. Its diet reflects both opportunity and constraint, shaped by what can be reached without extensive climbing or exposure. Stretching through dense clusters of vegetation, the okapi's elongated, flexible tongue becomes the primary tool for accessing food sources that would otherwise remain out of reach. Capable of extending beyond the length of its muzzle, it wraps around branches and strips foliage with controlled movements. This adaptation allows selective feeding on specific plant parts, reducing unnecessary movement through thick undergrowth and limiting energy expenditure in a structurally complex habitat. Within the understory, plant diversity is high, and nutritional quality varies widely between species. The okapi navigates this variation by sampling a broad range of vegetation, often returning to familiar feeding locations where regrowth patterns are predictable. Over time, These repeated visits influence plant regeneration, as consistent browsing pressure alters growth direction, leaf density, and branching structure in localized areas. Early morning hours often mark the beginning of feeding activity, when humidity remains high and plant surfaces retain moisture from overnight condensation. Leaves at this time are softer and more pliable, making them easier to strip and digest. As daylight intensifies and temperature increases, feeding patterns may shift toward shaded pockets where vegetation retains higher moisture content and lower fiber hardness. Feeding behavior extends beyond simple consumption. While browsing, the Okapi inadvertently contributes to seed movement across the forest floor. Seeds contained within consumed fruits or plant matter are later deposited through fecal matter in different locations, allowing for gradual redistribution of plant species across the landscape. This indirect dispersal supports genetic diversity among understory plants and contributes to long-term forest regeneration dynamics. Movement during feeding is slow and highly selective. Rather than covering large distances quickly, individuals progress through vegetation in incremental steps, pausing frequently to evaluate available plant material. This measured approach minimizes disturbance to surrounding foliage and reduces unnecessary energy expenditure. Each feeding session becomes a series of localized decisions, guided by scent, taste, and memory of previous foraging success. In areas where vegetation is particularly dense, the Okapi relies heavily on tactile exploration. Its tongue and lips probe through leaves and branches, identifying edible material without requiring full visual confirmation. This sensory approach is especially effective in low-light environments where visual cues are limited and overlapping vegetation obscures direct lines of sight. Plant communities within the Okapi's range respond to browsing pressure in subtle but measurable ways. Some species develop tougher leaves or chemical defenses, while others adapt by growing in less accessible positions within the understory. These interactions create a shifting balance between herbivore feeding habits and plant survival strategies, resulting in a constantly evolving ecological relationship. Seasonal variation influences dietary composition as well. During wetter periods, rapid plant growth increases availability of tender shoots and fresh leaves. In drier intervals, food sources become more fibrous and dispersed, requiring broader movement and more selective feeding choices. Despite these fluctuations, the Okapi maintains a flexible diet that allows continued survival across changing environmental conditions. Juvenile okapis gradually learn feeding preferences by observing their mothers, initially sampling small amounts of vegetation before developing independent foraging patterns. This learning period establishes familiarity with edible plant species and safe feeding zones within their home range. Over time, these learned behaviors become integrated into individual movement routines. Across the forest floor, the cumulative effect of Okapi browsing shapes the structure of the understory in ways that are difficult to observe directly, but significant in ecological terms. Vegetation density, species distribution, and growth patterns all reflect repeated interaction with this solitary browser, embedding its presence into the fabric of the forest. In this interconnected system, feeding is not an isolated activity, but part of a broader ecological exchange, where consumption, growth, and regeneration remain continuously linked. Inside the dense green architecture of the Congo basin, where branches overlap in constant competition for light, The okapi relies on one of its most specialized anatomical features to survive: an unusually long, flexible tongue adapted for both feeding and fine motor control. Measuring up to roughly 30 to 35 centimeters in length, it extends far beyond the reach expected for an animal of its size, allowing access to vegetation that would otherwise remain inaccessible within tangled understory growth. Emerging from the mouth of the okapi, the tongue is dark bluish-purple in color, a pigmentation that reduces visibility against the shaded forest backdrop and may also provide protection against sun exposure when extended. Its structure is muscular and highly mobile, capable of wrapping around stems, guiding leaves, and pulling plant material toward the mouth with controlled precision. This level of dexterity is rare among large herbivores and reflects a long evolutionary history shaped by forest specialization. Beyond feeding, the tongue also serves grooming functions that contribute to overall health and hygiene. It is frequently used to clean areas of the body that are difficult to reach with the limbs, including the face, ears, and flanks. This ability is particularly important in humid rainforest conditions where insects, moisture, and plant debris accumulate rapidly on the body surface. Regular grooming helps reduce irritation and maintains sensory clarity in environments where touch and smell play significant roles in perception. Movement of the tongue is highly coordinated with the lips and jaw, forming a synchronized system for selecting vegetation. Rather than tearing indiscriminately, the okapi is able to isolate individual leaves or small clusters, minimizing damage to surrounding plants. This selective feeding reduces unnecessary disturbance to the vegetation structure and allows repeated use of the same feeding sites over time without immediate depletion. Within the understory, plant surfaces vary widely in texture, thickness, and chemical composition. Some leaves contain fibrous material that requires careful stripping, while others are soft and easily removed. The tongue adapts to these variations in real time, adjusting grip strength and angle of pull based on resistance. This responsiveness allows efficient feeding even in complex botanical environments where plant density is high and visibility is low. Anatomically, the tongue's mobility is supported by a combination of elongated musculature and flexible connective tissue. These structures allow multidirectional movement, including lateral extension, curling, and precise retraction. Such versatility is essential in dense vegetation, where feeding often occurs in confined spaces between branches and vines. The ability to operate within narrow gaps reduces the need for larger body movements that could expose the animal to potential threats. Comparative biology places this adaptation within the broader context of the giraffe family. Like its distant relatives, the okapi exhibits specialized tongue function, though adapted for a very different ecological setting. While giraffes use their tongues primarily for high canopy browsing in open savanna-like environments, the okapi applies similar anatomical principles in a compressed, shadowed habitat where reach is measured in centimeters rather than meters. Hydration also plays a role in tongue function. The moist surface of the tongue interacts efficiently with plant material, aiding in both grip and transfer of nutrients during feeding. In the humid conditions of the rainforest, this moisture balance remains stable, supporting continuous activity without the need for frequent water intake interruptions during browsing. Young okapis develop control of tongue movement gradually, beginning with simple grazing behaviors and advancing toward more precise selection as coordination improves. This learning period is essential for mastering the fine-scale manipulation required to navigate dense vegetation efficiently. Over time, these motor skills become integrated into daily feeding routines, allowing consistent exploitation of available plant resources. Environmental conditions influence how the tongue is used throughout the day. In areas with thicker vegetation, extended reach becomes more important, while in more open understory sections, shorter, faster movements dominate. This adaptability ensures that feeding remains effective across a wide range of microhabitats within the forest. In combination with its body structure and sensory systems, the tongue transforms feeding into a highly controlled interaction with the surrounding plant world. It functions not merely as a feeding organ, but as a multi-purpose tool that connects anatomy, environment, and survival strategy within one of the most complex ecosystems on Earth. Navigation within the Congo Basin's interior requires constant adjustment to an environment where visibility rarely extends beyond a few meters. Under these conditions, the Okapi moves through a structure of vegetation that behaves less like open terrain and more like a shifting three-dimensional barrier. Roots arch across the ground, vines suspend from branches at irregular heights, and fallen logs fragment pathways into uneven segments that must be crossed with care. Foot placement becomes a central part of locomotion. Each step taken by the Okapi is measured against the risk of entanglement or noise. Hooves are narrow and well suited to penetrating soft forest soil, allowing stable contact even on damp or uneven surfaces. Rather than rapid travel, movement favors stability and precision, reducing disturbances that might reveal presence through sound or displaced vegetation. Spatial awareness in such an environment depends heavily on memory. Repeated exposure to familiar routes allows individuals to build mental maps of the forest structure, including reliable passageways, feeding zones, and resting locations. These internalized pathways are not fixed corridors, but adaptable routes that shift as vegetation grows, falls, or decays over time. Familiarity with these changes is essential for efficient travel. Sensory input beyond vision plays a critical role in guiding movement. Smell provides information about other animals, food sources, and recent activity along a path. Subtle changes in airflow can indicate open spaces or denser thickets ahead. Touch also contributes, as whisker-like facial hairs and body contact with vegetation help detect obstacles before full contact occurs. Progress through dense undergrowth often involves alternating between short advances and brief pauses. During these intervals, the Okapi assesses surrounding structure, adjusting direction if necessary to avoid barriers or unstable ground. This pattern of movement is repeated continuously, creating a rhythm defined by environmental constraints rather than speed or distance covered. In regions where vegetation opens slightly, movement becomes marginally faster, though still controlled. These openings are typically temporary, formed by fallen trees or seasonal plant dieback. Such gaps are quickly reclaimed by regrowth, meaning that routes remain transient and must be continually reassessed. The forest does not maintain fixed pathways. Instead, it reshapes them over time through natural regeneration. Rainfall influences ground conditions significantly. During wetter periods, soil becomes softer and more absorbent, allowing quieter foot placement and reducing resistance. However, increased moisture also encourages rapid plant growth, which can obstruct established roots within short time spans. In drier intervals, Hardened surfaces provide firmer footing, but increase the likelihood of audible contact with dry leaves and branches. Vertical complexity adds another layer of challenge. Low-hanging branches and dense vine networks create overhead obstacles that require careful lowering or angling of the head during passage. The okapi's neck flexibility allows it to adjust posture in response to these barriers, minimizing physical contact that could disturb surrounding vegetation or create unnecessary sound. Repeated movement through certain sections gradually influences the structure of the understory. Paths used frequently by multiple animals become slightly more defined over time, not through deliberate clearing, but through consistent compression of vegetation. These subtle corridors are shared among various forest species, forming a network of indirect connections across the landscape. Predator avoidance is closely linked to movement strategy. Large carnivores in the region rely heavily on detecting motion or sound within short ranges. By limiting abrupt movement and avoiding predictable travel patterns, the okapi reduces exposure risk. Stillness between movements and careful pacing contribute to reducing detection probability in environments where visual confusion is already high. Young individuals develop navigation skills through gradual exposure to increasing spatial complexity. Early movements remain close to maternal guidance, with progressively wider exploration as confidence in environmental familiarity grows. Over time, these experiences build a detailed understanding of forest structure, enabling independent travel across broader areas. Within this layered system of obstacles, pathways, and sensory cues, movement becomes an ongoing interaction between body and environment. Every adjustment reflects the constraints imposed by dense vegetation, uneven terrain, and limited visibility, shaping a form of locomotion uniquely suited to one of the most structurally complex ecosystems on Earth. For generations, knowledge of the Okapi existed primarily within the oral traditions and ecological understanding of Central African communities living within the Congo basin. Long before formal zoological classification, forest inhabitants were already aware of an elusive animal that moved through dense vegetation, rarely exposed to open view. This awareness stood in contrast to the uncertainty that later surrounded its recognition in Western scientific literature. European exploration of Central Africa during the late 19th and early 20th centuries gradually brought fragmented reports of an unfamiliar forest animal to scientific attention. Travelers and colonial administrators recorded descriptions of a creature with striped legs and a body resembling that of a horse or zebra, though these accounts were often inconsistent and difficult to verify. In many cases, the density of the rainforest made direct observation nearly impossible, leading early interpretations to dismiss the animal as misidentification or folklore. Interest increased when explorers began collecting physical evidence in the form of skins, skulls, and tracks. These materials provided the first tangible basis for classification, allowing zoologists to analyze anatomical features in detail. The skull structure revealed clear relationships to the giraffe family, despite the animal's radically different external appearance. This discovery required a significant revision of assumptions about giraffid evolution and ecological adaptation. The formal scientific identification of the okapi occurred in the early 20th century, when zoologist Sir Harry Johnston played a central role in assembling evidence and securing specimens for study. His work led to the naming of the species Okapia johnstoni, acknowledging both its distinctiveness and its connection to giraffe lineage. This classification marked a major milestone in mammalian taxonomy, as it confirmed the existence of a large, previously unrecorded ungulate species in a region thought to be increasingly well documented. Anatomical analysis revealed a combination of traits that initially appeared contradictory. While the body structure aligned with browsing mammals adapted to forest environments, certain skeletal features, particularly the vertebrae and cranial elements, confirmed its placement within the giraffid family. This duality highlighted the extent to which environmental isolation can shape divergent evolutionary outcomes within a single lineage. Indigenous ecological knowledge played an essential role in guiding scientific understanding, even if it was not always formally recognized at the time. Local descriptions provided consistent accounts of the animal's behavior, habitat preferences, and physical characteristics, offering a foundation that complemented physical specimen analysis. The convergence of indigenous observation and scientific investigation illustrates how multiple knowledge systems contributed to the eventual recognition of the species. The discovery of the Okapi also exposed limitations in early biological surveying methods. Dense rainforest environments present significant challenges for observation, including restricted visibility, difficult terrain, and high biodiversity that complicates species identification. These factors contributed to delays in documenting species that, while not necessarily rare, were effectively concealed within complex habitats. Subsequent research expanded understanding of the Okapi's ecological role and distribution within the Congo basin. Field studies confirmed its preference for undisturbed forest regions, as well as its sensitivity to habitat fragmentation. These findings reinforced the importance of intact forest systems for sustaining specialized species adapted to narrow ecological niches. Modern conservation biology continues to rely on both field observation and local ecological knowledge to monitor populations. Protected areas within the Democratic Republic of Congo have become critical for safeguarding remaining habitats, particularly as external pressures from logging, mining, and infrastructure development increase across the region. The Okapi's scientific history serves as a reminder that biological discovery is not always a matter of finding new organisms in unknown places, but sometimes of recognizing what has long existed outside formal documentation. Its emergence into scientific awareness reflects the intersection of exploration, evidence gathering, and the gradual refinement of classification systems used to describe Earth's biodiversity. Across the central stretch of Africa, the Congo Basin remains one of the largest continuous rainforest systems on the planet. Yet even its vast scale has not shielded it from accelerating environmental pressure. Logging operations, mining concessions, and expanding infrastructure corridors have gradually reshaped sections of what was once uninterrupted forest, creating fragmented landscapes where continuity is increasingly difficult to maintain. Within these changing boundaries, the Okapi depends heavily on intact forest structure. Its survival is tied to dense understory vegetation, stable feeding zones, and interconnected canopy systems that regulate humidity and temperature stability at ground level. When these elements are disrupted, even partially, the ecological balance that supports its feeding and movement patterns begins to shift. Deforestation represents one of the most significant pressures. As trees are removed for timber or land conversion, the layered structure of the forest collapses in localized areas. This loss reduces canopy cover, alters light penetration, and increases ground level exposure. For a species adapted to shaded environments with complex cover, such changes can create conditions that are less suitable for long-term stability. Mining activity introduces additional disruption. Extraction sites often require road construction, clearing of vegetation, and sustained human presence. These developments not only remove habitat directly, but also open previously inaccessible regions to further exploitation. Increased access leads to secondary effects, such as hunting pressure and broader ecological disturbance, extending beyond the immediate site of activity. In parallel with industrial expansion, armed conflict in parts of the region has also contributed to environmental instability. Movement of armed groups through forested areas can result in unregulated resource use and reduced enforcement of conservation protections. In such conditions, wildlife populations may experience indirect pressure, even in regions not directly targeted for extraction or development. Habitat fragmentation has emerged as a critical concern for species dependent on large, continuous forest tracts. When intact forest is divided into smaller, isolated patches, movement between suitable feeding and breeding areas becomes more difficult. For an animal that relies on extensive but connected ranges, this fragmentation can reduce access to resources and limit genetic exchange between populations. Poaching adds a direct biological threat. Although the Okapi is naturally elusive and tends to avoid human contact, it is not immune to targeted hunting. In some regions, individuals are captured or killed for meat or for trade, further reducing population stability. Because reproduction rates are relatively slow and dependent on stable environmental conditions, even limited losses can have long-term effects on local population density. Conservation efforts have focused on establishing protected areas within the Democratic Republic of Congo, including reserves specifically designed to safeguard Okapi habitat. These protected zones aim to preserve continuous forest structure and limit large-scale disruption. However, enforcement remains challenging due to logistical constraints, limited resources, and the vast scale of the forest itself. Ecological research has shown that the Okapi functions as an indicator species for forest health. Its presence suggests relatively intact understory, conditions, stable vegetation cycles, and minimal large-scale disturbance. Declines in local populations often correspond with broader environmental degradation, making it an important reference point for conservation monitoring. Field surveys conducted in recent decades indicate that population trends vary significantly across regions. Areas with stronger protection measures tend to maintain more stable numbers, while regions exposed to higher levels of human activity show greater decline. This uneven distribution reflects the patchwork nature of conservation success across the basin. Climate variability also interacts with human pressures, influencing vegetation growth patterns and water availability. While the Okapi is adapted to humid rainforest conditions, extended alterations in rainfall distribution can affect plant regeneration rates and feeding consistency. These environmental shifts compound existing threats rather than replacing them, adding another layer of complexity to survival conditions. Community-based conservation initiatives have increasingly involved local populations in monitoring and habitat protection efforts. By integrating ecological knowledge with local stewardship, these programs aim to strengthen long-term sustainability. Their effectiveness often depends on stable governance structures and consistent support for conservation infrastructure. Within this broader context of environmental change, the Okapi's continued existence reflects both resilience and vulnerability. Its reliance on undisturbed forest systems means that its future is directly linked to the preservation of one of the most biologically diverse ecosystems on Earth. Deep within the layered rainforests of Central Africa, the Okapi exists as a living reflection of evolutionary divergence within the giraffe family. Its lineage traces back to a common ancestor shared with modern giraffes, yet its present form demonstrates how isolation within dense forest ecosystems can reshape anatomy, behavior, and ecological role over extended evolutionary timescales. Unlike its savanna-dwelling relatives, the Okapi has adapted to life in a restricted light environment where visibility is limited and movement corridors are narrow. Its elongated neck, while still present, is far less pronounced than that of giraffes, reflecting a shift away from high canopy browsing toward understory feeding. This structural adjustment illustrates how selective pressures can reduce or modify ancestral traits when environmental demands change. Comparative anatomy confirms its placement within the Giraffidae family through shared skeletal characteristics, including similarities in vertebrae structure, skull morphology, and dental patterns. These features provide clear evidence of common descent, even though external appearance differs dramatically between the two lineages. In this sense, the Okapi represents a branch of evolutionary history that diverged into a highly specialized forest-adapted form. Evolutionary adaptation in this species is closely tied to the complexity of the Congo Basin ecosystem. Dense vegetation, uneven terrain, and limited sightlines create conditions where survival depends more on concealment, spatial awareness, and selective feeding than on speed or long-distance vision. Over time, these pressures shaped a body plan optimized for stability and precision rather than open environment mobility. The striped pattern on the legs, often noted as one of its most distinctive features, reflects an adaptation to fragmented light conditions within the understory. Rather than serving a decorative function, it interacts with shifting illumination patterns created by canopy gaps and leaf movement. This interaction contributes to visual disruption in environments where background patterns are already highly variable. Fossil evidence and genetic studies support the idea that the Okapi's divergence from giraffe-like ancestors occurred in response to forest expansion and climatic shifts that altered African landscapes over millions of years. As woodland environments became more dominant in certain regions, populations adapted to enclosed habitats experienced different selective pressures compared to those in open plains. Within its ecological niche, the Okapi occupies a specialized role as a browser of understory vegetation. Its feeding habits influence plant composition and growth patterns, contributing to the regulation of forest structure at ground level. This interaction between herbivore and vegetation forms part of a broader ecological network that maintains biodiversity within the rainforest system. Behaviorally, the species reflects a long-term adaptation to environments where direct interaction between individuals is limited. Solitary ranging, scent-based communication, and low-frequency vocalizations all support survival in a habitat where visual contact is often obstructed. These traits align with broader evolutionary trends observed in other forest-adapted mammals, though the Okapi's lineage remains unique in its combination of giraffid ancestry and rainforest specialization. Scientific understanding of the species continues to evolve through field research and genetic analysis. Modern studies have refined knowledge of its population structure, habitat requirements, and evolutionary history, revealing a more detailed picture of how it fits within the broader framework of African biodiversity. These findings reinforce the importance of preserving intact forest ecosystems, not only for the survival of the species itself, but also for the ecological relationships it supports. In broader biological terms, the Okapi demonstrates that evolutionary outcomes are not linear or predictable. Instead, they reflect branching pathways shaped by environmental variation, geographic isolation, and ecological opportunity. Its existence highlights how a single lineage can produce dramatically different forms when separated by habitat and time. As a living representative of an ancient divergence, the Okapi embodies the long-term adaptability of life within one of the planet's most complex ecosystems. Its continued presence in the Congo basin stands as evidence of evolutionary resilience within a landscape defined by density, variation, and constant ecological interaction. As our journey through the Congo rainforest comes to a close, picture the Okapi slowly disappearing into mist and foliage, the forest settling back into deep green stillness. There is a quiet mystery in this hidden world, ancient, gentle, and undisturbed. Let the gentle sensations of peace and calmness settle through your body and mind. Feel your thoughts slow, your breathing deepen, and your body soften into rest. If you enjoyed this relaxing moment, please consider liking, subscribing, or sharing your thoughts below. You can also turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of our future journeys together. But for now, let your body relax, release all tension, and allow your mind to drift gently into rest. Good night and sleep well.